This video contains historical content that may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. This is an educational documentary. Some stories in history are so horrifying, so inhumane, that retelling them feels like reopening a wound. But some wounds should never heal, because forgetting them means risking their return. Today, we step into one of the darkest chapters of human history, the torture methods used by the Nazis during the rise and reign of Adolf Hitler's Third Reich. This isn't fiction. This is the chilling truth. The Nazi regime didn't just rule Germany, it dominated it through fear, surveillance, and unimaginable brutality. The Gestapo, or secret police, was at the center of this machine. Established in 1933, it was designed to root out enemies of the state. These enemies included Jews, communists, Jehovah's Witnesses, political dissidents, homosexuals, Roma people, and even German citizens who dared to speak out. Their arrest didn't usually lead to trial. It led to torture, and it began the moment they were taken. The first stop was often an interrogation facility, hidden rooms in Gestapo headquarters or converted buildings where screams echoed behind closed doors. Berlin's Prinz Albrechtstrasse, the Gestapo headquarters, became a name that struck fear across the Reich. The same applied to Vienna's Hotel Metropole and Cologne's Elde House. Prisoners were dragged into dark rooms, sometimes blindfolded, stripped, and chained. Then the interrogation began, not for truth, but for submission. They used a variety of physical and psychological torture methods, some documented by survivors, others by the Nazis themselves. The Nazi interrogation toolkit was as cruel as it was calculated. Beating was standard. Victims were flogged with rubber truncheons, wooden sticks, or fists, on their faces, genitals, or the soles of their feet. The goal wasn't to kill, but to break. Hanging torture was another method. Prisoners had their hands tied behind their backs and were then hoisted off the ground by their arms, dislocating shoulders and causing excruciating pain. This technique was known as Fallbinden, or pole binding. Electric shocks were applied to sensitive areas. One survivor described being shocked repeatedly until he passed out, then revived, only for it to start again. Sleep deprivation was common. Interrogators would keep lights on 24/7 and bang on metal doors every few minutes. Some prisoners were kept awake for days until they began hallucinating or confessing to anything just to stop the torment. Mock executions added psychological torture. Victims were lined up against a wall, blindfolded, and told they were going to die, only for the guards to laugh and walk away after pulling an empty trigger. While the Gestapo brutalized prisoners, Nazi doctors committed a different kind of torture, under the guise of science. In the concentration camps, especially Auschwitz, Dachau, and Ravensbrück, Nazi physicians performed human experiments so cruel they remain among the worst in history. Victims were injected with diseases like typhus or tuberculosis to observe their effects, without treatment. Infected wounds were deliberately contaminated with gangrene or feces. At Dachau, doctors exposed prisoners to freezing temperatures in hypothermia experiments, dunking them in ice water for hours to study how long the body could endure cold. Some prisoners were forced into high-altitude chambers and decompression tanks, often dying as their lungs ruptured or brains swelled. In Ravensbrück, many women, most of them Polish political prisoners, were subjected to bone and muscle mutilation, their limbs shattered or infected, just to test surgeries or antiseptics. None of them volunteered. Many did not survive. Those who did were left with lifelong scars, physical and emotional. Hey guys, just want to say something real quick. A lot of you watch these videos and seem to really enjoy the content, but some of you still haven't subscribed to the channel. If you're one of them, please take a second and hit that subscribe button. It really helps support what I do and motivates me to... Alright, now, let's get back to the story. Concentration camps like Auschwitz, Buchenwald, and Mauthausen weren't just death factories. They were arenas of daily torture. Prisoners were forced into standing cells, tiny boxes where they couldn't sit or move for days. Others were locked in dark cells without light, food, or air. The pole-hanging punishment, similar to what the Gestapo used, was employed at camps like Auschwitz. Victims would hang by their wrists for hours until their arms broke or dislocated. Public beatings were regular. Guards would select a prisoner at random and force others to beat them. If they didn't do it hard enough, they were next. Sometimes prisoners were forced to carry heavy stones upstairs for hours, only to be ordered to start again. At Buchenwald, an SS guard named Martin Sommer became infamous for his cruelty. He would insert sticks or rods into prisoners' bodies, whip them until skin fell off, or crush testicles with boots. Survivors described games guards played, ripping off fingernails, using dogs to maul prisoners, or tying prisoners up and letting them freeze to death outside in the snow. Not all victims broke. Even under torture, some resisted. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a Protestant pastor arrested for resisting the Nazis, was tortured in Flossenburg concentration camp. Even as his body was broken, he reportedly prayed for his torturers. He was executed in 1945. Sophie Scholl, a member of the White Rose Resistance, was interrogated by the Gestapo and sentenced to death by guillotine. Her last words, "Such a fine sunny day, and I have to go. But what does my death matter if through us thousands of people are awakened and stirred to action?" After the war, the world learned of the full scale of the torture. At the Nuremberg trials, Nazi leaders were confronted with the evidence, the testimonies of survivors, the photographs, the confessions. Some were hanged, others imprisoned, but many lower-ranking officers, interrogators, guards, doctors, slipped away into civilian life. Some even helped Western intelligence agencies during the Cold War in exchange for protection. But the scars of torture on bodies, minds, and history remained. When we speak of Nazi torture, we must not do it for shock value. We do it because forgetting enables repetition. These atrocities didn't happen in the Dark Ages. They happened less than a century ago. In hospitals, schools, homes turned into prisons across one of the most developed nations of the time. Ordinary people committed extraordinary evil, and they did it by obeying orders, embracing ideology, and dehumanizing others. Remembering is an act of resistance. The Nazi regime is gone, but torture is not. Around the world today, in dictatorships and war zones, similar horrors still occur. So ask yourself, what would you do if torture became legal in your country? Again, would you speak up or stay silent? Never again is only true if we mean it. Share this video. Keep the memory alive.